Good afternoon everyone, Serenity Prime here, bringing you an update to our Smite Slayer build. Now we got into maps last night and we're currently at tier 2 maps. Our damage is currently sitting at 35,000 for our tooltip damage. However, that's wildly inaccurate and I'm going to show you why in just a sec. First, we start off with what gear we're currently wearing. We have a decent sword, a lot of flat lightning damage, and this was to counter the nerf to abyssal flat lightning damage. I feel that the flat lightning damage on our weapon here has indeed countered that nerf. Our other big source of damage comes from our chance to deal double damage while focused. We have 13% chance on our weapon, and we also have 15% chance on our shield, so we get almost 30% chance to do double damage for 4 seconds. Now this helps tremendously with bossing because effectively it's almost a 30% more damage multiplier while it's up. Our helmet also helps increase our damage from our lightning resistance reduction. So it's effectively a 9% more damage because it reduces their elemental resistance by 9%. We also have lightning penetration on our tree, roughly 13%, and we also get 10% from our wise oak flask because all of our resistances are equal, which means we also get the 10% reduced damage taken, which helps with our own survivability. Our health is currently sitting at 4,500, but we're only level 71, so that's when we hit level 80, 85, that's going to ramp up to over 5,000, which is quite respectable for a melee build, although you could always want it to be higher. But if you really want it higher, if you want a 6,000 life slayer, you need a lot more health on the gear than what we currently have. So let's take a look at our skill tree using Path of Building. Now you notice that while our tooltip DPS was only 35,000, in Path of Building our total DPS is almost 300,000, and there's a few reasons for that. One, our tooltip doesn't take into account when focus is active, so that's 30% more damage. It does not take in our tooltip in hideout does not take into account our power charges, our flasks, our frenzy charges, and even the slayer bonuses from our slayer ascendancy. So with all of that active, we get 300,000 single target damage per second. Now we can effectively double that if we position correctly, because with Ancestral Call and Smite we can hit a single target twice if we're in the correct position. So there's a few places that we can take our tree from here. The first place I want to do is finish getting these life nodes and get a little bit more life. I want to hit 5,000 life on this character, and hopefully that'll feel pretty good. The second place we can go is we can get more damage. Now if we hit this show power node button down here, we get a pretty good visual representation of what nodes are going to give us the most amount of damage. Now when we want to get these nodes, we need to balance the amount of nodes that we're going to have to spend. So this one over here, we get, if we were to take all the nodes leading up to it, we get a total of 20.6 damage per second for just 4 points. That's a very good choice, and we're definitely going to go for that one. If we went down here, we would get a total DPS of 15.7. If we took all the nodes leading up to it, 4 nodes for 15.7%. If we go up here with Forces of Nature, this will give us 13.4 for 4 nodes. So really, we want to balance out where we want to go in the tree and how much we want to spend in order to get there. So our two priorities at the moment are health and more damage. So let's talk about our gear progression. Where do we go from here? And how can we improve our damage and life? Let's see what pieces of gear we can take out and replace with something else. We'll start with our sword. I feel this is a pretty good sword. We have really high lightning damage, we have a pretty high attack speed, and we have 40% elemental damage with attack skills. And we've crafted on double damage. Now the only way this sword could really be better is if we also had penetration on it, which we'd need to fossil craft ourselves or buy one. I feel this might be a little too far out of our budget for this one. I don't believe I have enough currency to buy one that good. I also don't think I'm lucky enough to be able to craft one with a low enough amount of fossils and resonators to make that a worthy venture. So this sword, we're definitely keeping. Tomb Fist, we have to keep this. It's a staple of our build. It gives us 2 abyss sockets. That is not going anywhere. Our Stygian Vise. We could get a better Stygian Vise. If we take a look at the rolls, we could get a higher life roll. We could get a higher elemental damage with attack skills. Only about 10-20% extra, but that would still be a significant chunk of damage. Now our resistances are pretty high. We could get a 3rd resistance instead of our increased life recovery, but I think I'm going to stick with the increased life recovery because we have balanced resistances, even if that isn't a resistance suffix. So we're going to keep our Stygian Vise. Now we come to our boots. We could definitely get better boots, but the higher we go in boots, the more costly that's going to be. Movement speed, we've got a pretty decent amount of movement speed on it. We got 30 and 5% if we haven't been hit recently. Unfortunately, because I'm the one playing this build, I get hit a lot. So we don't really see that movement boost very often, but we leap slamming everywhere, so that's not really as important. Now in terms of could we get better boots, we have a pretty good life roll. We could divine it higher, but I don't think that would be worth it. I don't think there's a need to divine these boots. For what they are, for the prefixes and suffixes they have, it's not going to get much better. Now we could get better boots. We could have strength on them, we could have more armor, we could have more resistances. A higher armor pair of boots would certainly be helpful because we're about to start using Molten Shell instead of our dash, and we need as much armor as we can get. Likewise, with Molten Shell, we will be replacing our Chemist's Silver Flask of Heat with a Basalt Flask or a Granite Flask. Most likely a Granite Flask for Molten Shell and the armor increase. We get our Onslaught from our Abyss Jewels on killing things. And once we do Uberlab, we'll effectively have double Onslaught. Now if we take a look at our chest piece, now there's two other options, sorry. Because we're using lightning damage, we could go for a 6-link impulses, and that would certainly help with our clear speed. But personally, I find our clear speed is pretty good, and we don't really need it to be much higher. It's the single target damage that we really want to slam them on. I feel that this one, with the extra crit chance and the flat amount of life that we're getting off of it, is certainly on the higher end of the 6-link armor pieces that we can use. We could always socket in a Shroud of the Lightless. We get 5 links, we get free level 20 elemental penetration, so that would take out our lightning pen support. And we get an extra abyss socket out of it. So we'd free up a couple of points on our tree, or we'd just get more flat lightning damage from that abyss jewel. So that is our armor options. Of course, you could always get a higher life armor if you had a lot of strength as a suffix. If you had... oh, that's actually a tier 1 life roll. I was not aware of that. So we're already approaching the upper limits of the amount of life we can get from a chest. We could get a hybrid roll instead of that armor roll. We could get a hybrid armor and life roll, and that would push our life up 20-40 more base. So we get an extra 100 life points from that. But we're already pushing it pretty high. In terms of our shield, we could get a better shield. We could 100% get a better shield. I wanted a high armor. I had to settle for 872, which is still very good. If we quality that up, we'll have over 1,000, which is still very decent. Now the main thing that we were looking for in this shield was a lot of life, a bit of lightning res, and an open suffix to craft double damage. If your resistances were balanced already, you'd have a much better chance and a much better budget for getting a pure armor life shield, which ultimately is what I want to go for. I also want to pick up those nodes on the skill tree that give you increased defenses, because when I hit Molten Shell, I really want a huge Molten Shell. I want to be able to stand still and just go to town on the enemies, while the Molten Shell bears the brunt of the retaliation that I'm going to receive for doing that. So in terms of shield, we could get better. The one we've got now is definitely sufficient though. If we look at our jewellery is pretty well off. We have our intelligence lapis amulet here because we need the intelligence. We need our wrath at a high level. We need our herald of lightning at a high level. The more flat damage we get from them, the more damage we can dish out. So as far as our amulet goes, there is an open prefix available to us. There's not a lot we could do with that, but I'm sure there's something that we could get good from that. In terms of our mastercraft, we did that in order to balance our resistances to achieve the full effect of the Wise Oak Flask. Now we go to our first ring. It's a decent ring. It could definitely be better. Everything really could be better. It depends on how much we're willing to invest, and really, to get perfect rings, to get perfect equipment, it's out of our pay grade. We don't have enough currency for that. So our first ring here, we're missing the natural elemental damage with a text roll, so we've had to craft that on. That could be a lot higher. That could go up to 42%. We'd get a lot more damage out of that if it was a natural roll. Same with a life, we could get a lot more life out of this. We go to our second ring here, and this one's pretty good. Now we have crafted accuracy on there because I felt that our accuracy was lacking a little bit. However, if we take this off, we really only lose 3% chance to hit or 4% chance against evasive, which is not too much of a big deal. So instead of the accuracy, we could craft a resistance, but our resistances are already balanced, so we don't actually need to do that. Now in terms of other stats, the increased fire damage is a dud. That does not help us even in the slightest. So we could definitely get a better ring on this side. We could get, our life roll is already pretty good. It's a tier 1 life roll. We could have gotten more strength on it, but again, it's still pretty good. This is 80-90 life just in one ring, so that's a pretty decent amount of life. So all in all, our gear is to the higher end. It's not the top end, but it's certainly above our middle ground here. So our gear is looking pretty good. We'll do a few flask crafting to get a better flask than our silver flask because we no longer need it. And we really want just more armor out of this. Now in terms of survivability, the amount of health we're on, and for the tier of maps we're doing, we're pretty good. We're smashing the legions, we're dropping the rare mobs, we're smashing through tier 2 maps very easily. I think it's time we left tier 2 and we start pushing the higher tier maps, and we'll see just how far we can actually push it later on today. Now for those of you who want to see how this build plays out, how it feels to play, how smooth it is to play, feel free to jump on over to www.twitch.tv/serenityprime, as that's where I'm streaming, and that's where you can get live updates on how this build is going. Now to know when I go live, I have set up a Twitter account at prime_serenity, and I'll be tweeting out when these streams go live, so you can keep up to date with the build we're doing, how it's going, and what our plans for our next build is going to be. My name's been Serenity Prime. Have a nice day.